Good afternoon everyone! Kamusta naman kayo? I hope you are all doing good despite of maalinsangang panahon that we have today. So before we get started, my name is Kirsten Jean Quirol and I'm a member of Group 6 from BSSW2B along with Gabriel Pasique, Jessa Quinto, and Andernan Pagia. For today's topic, we will talk about the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women or the CEDAW. First, we will define the CEDAW. Second, we will look at the 30 articles of the CEDAW that contain the preamble of women's rights clauses. Then we will go over the CEDAW's optional protocol. And finally, we will go over the CEDAW's procedural history and Philippine participation in bringing the CEDAW into action. Without further ado, let us begin. So ano nga ba sinasabing CEDAW? The CEDAW is often referred to as the International Bill of Rights for Women. The CEDAW is one of their international human rights instruments abbreviated for the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. It is also often referred as International Bill for Women. Kilala din ito bilang the Women's Convention or United Nations Treaty for the Rights of Women. So meaning ito ang kauna-unahan at tanging international na kasunduan that comprehensively discuss the rights of women, hindi lamang sa sibil at political na larangan but also sa aspetong kultural, pang-ekonomiya, panlipunan at pampamilya. Because it is one of the core international human rights treaties of the United Nations treaty system, it requires member states to undertake legal obligation to respect, protect, and fulfill human rights. This may sound complicated but the message is straightforward. Simply put, women everywhere should be allowed to exercise their rights and be protected from discrimination. December 19, 1979, CEDAW was adopted by the UN General Assembly, coming into force as a treaty on December 3, 1981. CEDAW is currently one of the most widely accepted human rights treaties in the world, and actors from the Global South have played a key role in its development. Every country that has ratified the treaty has agreed to abide by its terms. CEDAW Convention 3 Foundational Principles. The CEDAW focuses on women's rights and women's concerns globally. It adheres to 3 principles: non-discrimination, state obligation, and substantive equality. The first principle is non-discrimination. It is integral to the concept of equality. The Convention seeks to eliminate discrimination against women in all fields and spheres. It holds both state and non-state actors in the case of violation of rights. As of May 2015, 189 states have signed the CEDAW Convention. This means they give their respect, protect, promote, and fulfill the rights of women in the respected countries. However, discrimination still exists in many countries both directly and indirectly. Many countries practice nationality laws that directly discriminate against women and children. For example, in Saudi Arabia, fathers are allowed by law to transfer their citizenship to their children, but mothers cannot. Without citizenship, of course, the child is denied access to healthcare, education, and other benefits available to citizens. In this situation, it obviously restricts a woman's capacity to transmit citizenship onto a child, exemplifying direct discrimination against women. While indirect discrimination stems from gender-neutral laws and regulations that appears to provide equal opportunity and access to men and women, but in practice, women are at a disadvantage owing to historical discrimination caused by the patriarchal systems. Yes, may mga laws and policies na nagbibigay ng equal opportunity and access to both men and women, pero in terms of practicing it, palaging talo ang kababaihan. What's the reason behind this? That is due to historical discrimination caused by patriarchal systems. Because of male supremacy, women have historically faced oppression and discrimination. The role of the male as the major authority figure is important to social order in patriarchal society. It's necessary to keep in mind that non-discrimination against women must exist both de jure and de facto. De jure refers to the law, but de facto refers to what is actually happening in reality. In Bubog, for example, there is a fish farm project. According to the fallacy, which is the de jure, it will provide equal opportunities for both men and women to become farmers and earn a better living. Everyone will be permitted to participate in all aspects of the training, with the exception of the requirement that candidates have farmland to work on. During implementation, no women participated, and it was discovered that women do not own farms because inheritance laws are discriminatory and do not allow women to inherit property, and this is de facto, since it is what happened to reality. Local culture also forbids women from controlling or accessing family income or assets, including their husbands' lands. There are several laws and programs that are intended to assist women but fail to take into consideration the historical discrimination that prevents women from enjoying those rights. There is possibility that such policies and legislation exist in some countries and scenarios. This leads to state obligation. State obligations embodies the elements that is respect, protection, promotion, and fulfillment of human rights. The CEDAW Convention is one of the most widely ratified UN treaties worldwide. This means that the government and country state party has to take measures to improve women's status in the country. The legislature, executive, and judiciary organs of government are responsible for the fulfillment of all state obligations. A democratic country, for example, in Philippines, we have three branches of power: the legislative, executive, and judiciary. The legislature makes and amends laws and also controls national finances or budget, while the executive branch enforces the law, runs government of the day. It is also responsible for implementation of law and delivering services such as education and welfare. Finally, the judiciary is responsible for the discrimination of justice, interpreting the Constitution and various laws. Therefore, in each country, dapat itong three branches ng government na ito ay magtrabaho at magtulungan upang ma-achieve ang gender equality dahil sila ang gumagawa ng batas. They also govern the people and sila ang humahatol sa isang tao upang makamit ang hustisya. When countries ratified CEDAW Convention, it became legally a binding document. This state is obligated to subscribe to the articles of the convention and effectively implement it as soon as possible. Every 4 years, state has to refer to CEDAW committee taken to respect, protect, promote, and fulfill the rights of women in their countries. Based on the convention, the state has to respect the rights of women and cannot do anything to violate human rights such as enact discriminatory laws, engage in discriminatory practices, and the state must also repeal all discriminatory laws. It also upholds the concept of diligence, which demands ensuring the prevention, investigation, and sanctioning of private acts of discrimination. In summary, the state party to the CEDAW Convention must act with diligence, which means that the state is accountable for all discrimination against women, whether she is in private or public sphere, to prevent discrimination, prohibit discrimination, identify discrimination, and provide redress, impose sanctions against discriminatory act, promote women's rights and equality through active measures and accelerate de facto equality. The next is substantive equality, acknowledges as products of negative female stereotypes and consequently seeks to eliminate discrimination at the individual, institutional, and systemic levels through corrective and positive measures including enabling conditions and affirmative actions. So there are many contributing reasons to inequality. Some people are born with much more access, opportunities compared to others. Gender stereotypes enforce the difference between men and women. It labels women weak and need protection, but in reality, both men and women share the same traits except productive capability. So women and men are different, but ultimately we are equal. After knowing the core principle of CEDAW, let's explore one by one by the articles of CEDAW. The Article 1. So, as what I have said earlier, and indirect discrimination affects women's rights and freedom in the political, economic, social, cultural, civil, or any other field. That's why this should remove to overcome gender inequality that could lead to considerable positive economic and human development outcomes include health, education, and many more. In the second article, all of the state party have big impact in eliminating discriminatory laws and policies as well as practices because they are the lawmaker. They implement and monitor outcomes to ensure that the rights of women are promoted, protect, and fulfilled. First, the state should ensure that women are enjoying the rights and freedom by accessing the same opportunities with men and ensure that they will positively benefit from the outcome of appropriate measures. Further, the state must have de facto equality, as serve as special measures to promote and fulfill the full development and advancement of women. As state to sign in the CEDAW, state must eliminate stereotyping, prejudices, and discriminatory cultural practices because these are the cause root why women are undervalued and not achieve equal rights and opportunities in their country. As a form of violence against women, every state must stop any sign of trafficking and the exploitation of prostitution of women. This must necessitate immediate measures and attention of every member state.
So, magandang araw po sa inyong lahat. Ako po si Gabriel L. Pasilio mula sa Group 6 at ang aking itatalakay ay ang mula Article 7 hanggang Article 14. So, umpisahan po natin sa Article 7. Ano nga po ba ang nakapaloob sa Article 7? Ito ay tungkol sa political and public life. So, dapat daw gawin ng state parties o mga estadong partido na lahat ng hakbang upang maalis ang diskriminasyon or discrimination against sa ating mga kababaihan, ito man ay political or public life of a country. Ano nga po ba ang Article 8? Ito ay tungkol sa representation o representasyon. So, state parties shall take all appropriate measure upang matiyak ang ng kababaihan sa equal terms sa mga lalaki at walang anumang diskriminasyon. So, dito rin sa Article 8 na ito, nakapaloob yung mga oportunidad ng to represent their government sa international level and to join o lumahok sa mga international organization. Like for example, yung mga kapwa nating Pilipino na nagre-represent ng ating bansa, like yung mga babaeng weightlifter na nananalo at nagre-represent ng ating Article 9 o tungkol ito sa nationality or nationalidad. So, state party shall grant o bigyan ang mga kababaihan ng equal rights with men to acquire o makuha na mapanatili ang kanilang nasyonalidad. Kasi they shall ensure o tiyakin na ang kasal sa isang dayuhan, take note, dayuhan o pagbabago ng nationality ng asawang lalaki sa panahon ng kasal ay hindi automatically nagbabago sa nationality ng asawang babae na magbibigay sa kanya ng stateless or persahin sa kanya ang nationality ng asawang lalaki. Kasi alam naman natin na maraming cases ng ganito, lalo na sa Pilipinas, na dahil nakakapag-asawa ka ng dayuhan, so minsan nababago yung nationality ng napangasawa mong kababaihan. So, dapat meron tayong rights about that, na bigyan ng equal na rights about sa kababaihan na pumili o hindi sundin or hindi masunod ang nationality kapag asawa ka ng dayuhan na lalaki. So, ito si Article 10, ito ay tungkol sa lahat ng antas ng edukasyon. Social parties take all the appropriate measure to eliminate discrimination against women upang matiyak ang kanilang equal rights sa mga kalalakihan o lalaki sa larangan ng edukasyon. At lalo upang matiyak on basis of equality of men and women. So, dumako naman po tayo sa Article 11, which all about employment. So, dito nakapaloob ang mga different opportunities in the fields of work or employment. So, this stage party shall be appropriate to eliminate discrimination against women in the field of employment. So, the same rights in a particular is the following. Una po, ang karapatang magkatrabaho at hindi pwedeng ialis sa karapatang ito ng mga Article 12, which is talk about health or kalusugan. So, dapat gawin ng isang state parties ang lahat ng nakaangkop sa hakbang upang alisin ang diskriminasyon laban sa ating mga kababaihan sa larangan ng healthcare. Naman tayo sa Article 13, which is economic and social benefits. So, dito nakapaloob ang mga ekonomiya or tungkol sa mga social benefits na nakukuha ng kababaihan. So, state parties shall take all the appropriate measure to eliminate discrimination against women in other areas of economic and social life, like for this following. So, una, karapatan sa mga benepisyo ng pamilya. So, katulad na nandito sa San Jose, may mga natatanggap ang mga iba't ibang pamilya ng mga benefits galing sa ating mga lokal. So, pangalawa, rights of pautang sa bangko and other form of financial credit. So, dito din may mga kooperatiba, may mga banks na nagpapautang like the card bank. Yung example na rin yun. So, pangatlo, rights to join sa mga aktibidad sa libangan sa lahat ng aspeto ng buhay kultura. Article 14, which is all about rural women. So, dapat natin isaalang-alang ang state parties ang mga problem faced by rural women and important role sa katayuan sa pagpapatunay ng ekonomiya sa pamilya.
Hi everyone, I'm Yasamay Bautista Quinto. Article 15 states shall ensure that women and men are treated equally before the law. Women have the same legal right to enter contracts on property and choose their place of residence. Sa Article 15, dito yung obligasyon ng state na matiyak na ang babae at lalaki, ang pagtrato nila sa isa't isa ay pantay-pantay bago pa magkaroon ng batas para dito. Article 16 shall ensure that women have equal rights with men in relation to marriage and as parents, as well as respect of other aspects of family life. Dito naman, kailangan na matiyak ng state na ang kababaihan ay magkaroon ng equal rights sa mga kalalakihan, sa relasyon man yan o sa pagpapakasal at maging isang magulang sa pamamagitan ng respeto sa iba't ibang aspeto ng family life. Article 17. For the purpose of considering the progress made in the implementation of the present convention, there shall be established a committee on the elimination of discrimination against women. Layunin dito, ma-establish ang Committee on the Elimination of Discrimination against Women. Hereinafter referred to as the committee, consisting at the time of entry into force of the conventions of 18 and after ratification of our accession to the convention by the 35th state. 40 of 23 experts of high moral standing and competence in the field covered by the conventions. The experts shall be elected by state parties from among their national and shall serve and their personal capacity consideration being given to equitable geographical distribution and to the representation of the different forms of civilization as well as the principal legal system. Article 18, Number 1. States parties undertake to submit to the Secretary General of the United Nations for consideration by the committee a report on the legislative, judicial, administrative, or other measure which they have adopted to give effect to the provisions of the present convention and of the progress made in this respect. A. Within 1 year after the entry into force for the state concerned. Thereafter, at last every 4 years, and further whenever the committee so requests. Number 2, reports may indicate factors and difficulties affecting the degree of fulfillment of obligation. Article 19, Number 1, the committee shall adopt its own rules of procedures. Number 2, the committee shall elect its officers for a term of 2 years. Article 20, Number 1, the committee shall normally meet for a period of not more than 2 weeks annually in order to consider the reports submitted in the accordance with Article 18 of the present convention. Number 2, the meetings of the committee shall normally be held at United Nations headquarters or at any other convergent place as determined by the committee. Amendment status of ratifications. Article 21, Number 1, the committee shall through the Economic and Social Council report annually to General Assembly of United Nations on its activities and make suggestions in general recommendation based on the examinations of reports and information received from the state parties. Such suggestion and general recommendations shall be included in the report of the committee, with comments, if any, from state parties. Number 2, the Secretary General of the United Nations shall transmit the reports of the committee to commissions on the statute of men for its information. Article 22. The specialized agencies shall be entitled to be represent at the consideration of the implementation of such provisions of the present convention as fall within the scope of their activities. The committee may invite the specialized agency to submit reports on the implementation of their convention in areas falling within the scope of their activities.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Evelyn Padilla, and this is my report. Article 23 deals with the relative consideration of gender equality, that is some means of stipulations expressed in different parts of the world provide a firmer foundation for the equality of the serves achievements of equality between men and women, which may be continued in the legislation of state party or in any other international convention, treaty or agreement enforced for that stage. Article 24. It's about to adopt or necessary measure at the national level and the achieving the full realization of the rights. Ito ay nagsasagawa ng mga kinakailangang panukala sa pambansang antas na makamit ang ganap na pagsasakatuparan ng karapatang kinakilala sa kasalukuyan tulad ng pag-ampon. Article 25. The present convention shall be open the accession by all states. Accession shall be effected by the deposit of the an instrument of accession with the Secretary General of the United Nations. Ito daw nagsasabi, kapag may kaso daw, i-present agad, convention to open to assess ng kaso ng affected, yung may kailangan tulungan. Article 26. The General Assembly of the United Nations shall decide upon the step of any to be taken in the respect of such as request. Sabi dito, kapag the General Assembly of the United Nations, kapag mag-decide kung ganito, ganyan ang step mo, itong gawin mo, kailangan mo itong respetuhin, kailangan mo itong intindihin. Article 27. The present convention shall enter into force on the 13th day after the date of the Secretary General of the United Nations of the 20th instrument of ratification or accession. Article 28. A reservation incompatible with the object of and purpose of the present convention shall not be permitted. Article 29 naman is about in accordance with paragraph 2 of this article. May be at the time withdraw that resolution for notification to the Secretary General of the United Nations. Article 30 to present convention to Arabic, Chinese, English, French, Russian, and Spanish texts. In witness whereof the understand to duty to analyze have signed the present convention. Ito daw yung kung anong ginagamit na language ito ay dapat i-present na maayos at maintindihan mo. Kasi kailangan ito for your
This
case.
protocol has been ratified by 96 parties to the convention. As of December 2008, provides the committee with competence to consider complaints from individuals or groups of individuals where certain free conditions are fulfilled. Most importantly, where domestic remedies have been exhausted. So ito ay procedure na ginagawa ng CEDAW Committee kapag may mga complaints or reports from member state about sa violation ng karapatan ng kababaihan sa anumang aspeto. Pwedeng gawin dito ang pag-iimbestiga o pagtatanong about sa violation na nangyari. Kapag hindi naman member state ng CEDAW, of course, walang optional protocol na ganito. The convention also established a treaty body entitled the Committee on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women for the purpose of considering progress made in its implementation. So the committee is composed of 23 experts of high moral standing and competence in the field covered by the convention, elected by the state parties from among their nationals but who serve in their personal capacity. The procedural history. The origin of the CEDAW can be tracked back to its 18th session in 1963. So nagkaroon ng 8th session ang General Assembly noong 1963 that requested the Economic and Social Council na imbitahan ng Commission on the Status of Women na mag-prefer ng draft declaration to eliminate the discrimination na nararanasan ng kababaihan in any aspects. This body is exclusively dedicated to the promotion of gender equality and the empowerment of women. In 1964, nagkaroon naman ng transmission ng resolution sa Commission on the Status of Women na naglalaman ng draft declaration noong 1963. While having the draft declaration, naglagay naman ng committee that containing the preliminary information about the draft in 1965. And in 1967, the Commission on the Status of Women completed a review of the draft text for text revision. Tiningnan nila kung may babaguhin, tatanggalin, at idadagdag sa draft. Also, the Economic and Social Council transmitted the draft to the General Assembly and the Assembly decided to refer it to the Third Committee for consideration. The Commission also asked the Secretary General to invite governments, specialized agencies, and non-governmental organizations with the consultative status at the United Nations to comment on the text of the draft convention prepared by the working group as contained in its report. At sinabi rin that time na dapat ang draft ay wala dapat na prejudice for the preparation of any future instrument which might be elaborated dealing with discrimination in specific fields. So nagkaroon ng malaking meeting sa Mexico about draft convention for submission of CEDAW with the presence of Economic and Social Council and Commission on the Status of Women. The Commission finalized the draft convention and sent it to the Economic and Social Council in 1976, taking into account documents received from states, specialized agencies, and non-governmental organizations. The General Assembly of the United Nations was unable to finalize the draft convention on the human rights in time for the 33rd session of the General Assembly 1978. So the General Assembly recommended that another working group be established with a mandate to continue consideration of articles which have not been completed during the current session. On December 1978, the General Assembly adopted resolution in which it recommended that a working group be established at the beginning of its 34th session to consider the final provision and to reconsider the articles which have not yet been completed with a view to adoption of the convention at the 34th session 1979. The working group considers the final provision and reconsiders the articles that have not yet been finalized in preparation for the convention's adoption at the 34th session in 1979. In 1979, ito na yung time na naaprubahan na ang final draft ng CEDAW and passed in CEDAW Committee body. The General Assembly passed the CEDAW by a vote of 130 to 0 with 11 abstention in December 1979. In 1980, hinihintay na lang ang signature ng different member states. In the long run, finally, noong 1981 is approved na ang CEDAW, the preamble, the core principles, and the articles, optional protocol, and committee. Finally, the Philippine participation in CEDAW. So, ang Philippines ay unang ASEAN na bansa na nag-sign sa CEDAW upang ma-eliminate ang discrimination against women together ratifying optional protocol. Sponsorship with Russian delegate. So, ito yung kauna-unahang nag-prefer ng first draft of CEDAW na inadapt naman ng United Nations as a basic working paper. nagkaroon din ng enactment ng RA 9710 or the Magna Carta of Women. So, when we say Magna Carta, it is a comprehensive women's human rights law that seeks to eliminate discrimination against women by recognizing, protecting, fulfilling, and promoting the rights of Filipino women, especially those in marginalized sectors. So, ito yung iba't ibang laws na naipasa na dito sa ating bansa. Alam kong familiar na rin kayo dito. I hope you gain something from us, and kung may mga tanungan po kayo is don't hesitate to ask the members of the group so that we can entertain your questions. Thank you!